Hi, everybody. Welcome to We Didn't Turn Out Okay. I'm here today with Jyoti Chand. She's a mom of three, influencer, and author of her upcoming book, a young adult graphic novel called Fitting Indian, and it's coming out May 13th. Before we dive into everything, Jyoti, can you share a little bit about who you are in your own words?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today. I guess in my own words, I'm just like a really creative mom of fur babies and humans. And I'm a suburb girl, not a city girl. I love hot Cheetos with
Oh,
in a
yum.
way that I probably shouldn't. And I eat it with sour cream. But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell, you know?
You're giving me great ideas. And yes, we had experience with your fur babies this morning. We might see some on your lap.
We might see them again. I got the kids tamed, but not the furs.
Right.
No.
Always something. You grew up as a South Asian Indian, and
Yeah.
that shaped a lot of who you are clearly. But can you tell us how that's covered in the book?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things growing up as a first generation American, my parents like immigrated here and I was born and raised in LA, um, is that we were really Indian at home, but at school we were really American. And there was this cultural confusion because we weren't Indian enough for the Indians, but we weren't American enough for the Americans. So we were kind of stuck in this in-between land of like, who are we? What is our identity? Where do we like and it took time, but as adults, I think a lot of me and my generation that can relate to this have realized that we are our own culture. Like we are not American or Indian. We're just kind of like this mid culture that it's beautiful in its own way, but that comes up in the novel because my main character, Natasha, she's 16. She's struggling with her own cultural identity as well as her mental health and family dynamics. I mean, there's so much in this book, and I don't want to give too much away, but there's a lot of trigger warnings on the front cover, like literally.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I mean, and you're a mental health advocate,
I
self
am.
care, how important that is. And so that shines through in the book, even with this.
Absolutely. So, the reason that I wrote Fitting Indian is it is realistic fiction, meaning that it's fiction, but it is based off of um, events that maybe
Right.
took place in my own life. So there's like pieces of me sprinkled in the book, but Natasha is her own story set in present day with social media, which is something we didn't really have in college, thank God.
Yes.
And
Thank God.
can you imagine the videos
No.
that would like from the frat house foam parties that would be
No.
like on our Facebook pages? Um, Literally used to drop the album on Facebook the morning after we came back from the parties.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Foam parties is just like scratching the surface, like the things that are going through my head.
but yeah, so we have this 16-year-old Indian girl who has a brother who's a physician, who's kind of like the perfect child. There's always like a comparison. She has the parents who expect a lot from her, especially for her to be like a good Indian girl, but she has her friends that she wants to like, drink with and smoke pot with. And, she has her own teenage sexual desires and she has a crush. And there's all these things that were a part of my own teenage experience that I like pulled into the book. But the mental health aspect is the most important because Natasha is struggling with self-harm. So she's self-harming and she's drinking alcohol, which eventually leads to a big downfall for her after she has a video go viral. And it's a
Obviously, a
lot about
negative video.
shame. A negative video went viral that she didn't, obviously didn't know was being taken. And it kind of goes from there, and she needs her community in order to heal. And so in our culture, South Asian culture, and I'm sure through a lot of Asian cultures, there's a lot of stigma on mental health. There's a lot of like, oh no, you don't need a therapist. Oh no, no,
Right.
no, like don't like, you're not crazy. Like you don't need to
Right.
like,
Like,
what will
suck
it
it
look
up.
like? What will people say? Oh, you're depressed, just be happy. Like
Right.
there's a lot of like, it's not even their fault. Like I could, like our parents and their parents, it's just they were taught to preserve the culture, and they did everything they could to do that, right?
Right.
So like traditions and culture were so important, but they lacked the knowledge of what is mental health. Like what is depression? It's not
Right.
just sadness.
Oh,
And that's kind of like where we're trying to change the narrative.
yeah. It's, someone growing up with firsthand experience, this is about you today though. Um,
Oh, tell
in my,
me.
my mom and I think her mom and maybe just a little bit myself, more anxiety for me. Yeah, it's like a real chemical illness, I believe,
Yeah,
that you have to
it is.
heal from and constantly treat. But anyway, I relate to the whole like just be happy mentality.
Yeah.
I grew up with an Israeli father and culture, so it might not have been as kind of strict in that way as maybe you, but
It's
there's
pretty
still,
similar.
yeah, there still was this like you have so much to be happy for and grateful for type of mentality around anything that wasn't
Yeah.
happy. Um, but I wonder in terms of I touched on that you're a mom, but you are a mom of three, 6.5,
Yeah.
8, and 22 months. You still have your baby.
I know.
But just did you think of them while writing this? I know the character is
Yeah,
16, but just, how they may see themselves one day in this book, or do you feel like you've kind of
absolutely.
mothered so differently from how you were brought up that maybe it won't feel relatable, or you still feel like they have that like cultural
I
pull?
think there's both sides, right? There's the aspect of seeing a brown teenager struggle with her mental health, like physically seeing that in a graphic
Right.
novel, right? For someone like my own daughter who may have anxiety when she's older, right? There is a genetic component to mental health. And so I personally have generalized anxiety disorder and depression. I'm on a nice dose of Zoloft.
Me
And
too.
I know, and
Cheers.
that's great. And we should be transparent about that because it is just like someone who's diabetic who's on metformin. It is a disorder, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking the medication that my doctor prescribed. And it has helped tremendously. And so I want my daughter and my sons, obviously, to know that, mental health is just as important as physical health. And when I wrote this book, I was thinking of them and their generation and how we can, by the time they're older, when they're teenagers, when I was 18, I went through my deepest depression and I tried to take my own life. That's where a lot of the inspiration of this book came from. It's 18 years after the fact, but when I look back, if I had a book like this that showed a person who looked like me having issues that were similar to mine, would it have been different?
Yeah.
Would I have approached it differently? Would I have sought help? And I think this ultimate feeling of like loneliness and seclusion culturally, because you feel like no one else has the same problems as you and everyone's family is fine, when that's not the case, everyone just keeps it under wraps, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think that us being so hush hush about our mental health, or like, us both saying we're on Zoloft so openly as prominent females of, it's someone's going to listen to that and be like, oh, I feel so much better that
Right.
I'm on Zoloft. I had someone DM me yesterday that was like, oh, because you have been so transparent about your mental health journey, and she's in a really bad postpartum depression, and her parents are telling her not to take Zoloft because her doctor has prescribed it, but she's decided to go forth and take it. Um, and I was like, well, I'm proud of you because I think that there's a fear, right? Like, what if there's
Absolutely.
so much fear behind mental health?
Yeah.
So, yes, I totally derailed your question, but yes, I did
No,
think of my
no,
children, but I am raising them differently. So,
yeah, I
to some
think,
extent,
and no, you didn't derail. I think that growing up, you know, as a teen, I started to kind of, discover things like I remember Prozac Nation. I related to, I saw a white female overcome depression and embrace Prozac. But, I
amazing.
saw those things and it made me feel secretly okay. I still wasn't like outwardly talking about it. I
Yeah.
still felt like it was a sign of weakness. And even as I started speaking out on social media, from the start, I didn't know that it would be a vulnerable account that it turned into, but then it just felt so wrong not to. Like you said,
Yeah.
to not be this person that's real and authentic about all of the things, to really help people see themselves in somebody else.
Right.
But that being said, I remember when I first spoke about taking Zoloft on social media, I think at the time it was maybe like 4 years ago, I said to my younger sister, who I feel like is voice of reason, like, should I share this or not? And my fear was people will think I'm crazy. Like, I'm not going to trust this girl who's on Zoloft. And I wonder if like you ever feel that way, and if you've covered that in the book or in what you do as an influencer speaking out about medication and mental health. Do you ever cover
Yeah.
that? Like you
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that
well, I'm also married to a psychiatrist.
oh,
And
so
so we
lucky.
are just like, oh my gosh, it's like free healthcare. You know what I mean? Like
Seriously, and
one less
such a difference from how
expense.
you were raised with, people who didn't
Yes, our
necessarily
children.
embrace that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so one of the things that our kids are getting that I didn't is they're getting like a very emotionally stable mother because I have chosen to make sure that I'm doing all the things so that my mental health is at bay. Like, I'm good, so I can be the best mom that I can be. And my mom didn't have the same resources that I did. And she was, had her deep depressions and her anxiety and didn't get, wasn't able to get the help that I did. And so, it was hard growing up seeing her struggle. And so there is one thing that I'm glad that I don't have to see, my kids don't have to see that to that extent. Um, but I do talk about on my platform about how important it is to be your best self so you could be the best parent you can be. Because if you're not, and if self-care isn't always spa days and a bath,
Right.
like it's not about that. For me, self-care is like going on a walk, putting some headphones in if I feel overstimulated. Like that's going to keep me from losing
Yeah.
and so I don't want to be overstimulated, but I'm in a house with three kids, two dogs, and a cat, and a husband. And then I have my dad who's visiting, and then I got my mother-in-law nearby. Like, it's always madness in this house. I'm surprised it's quiet right now. And
Me too.
I know they're just all in the basement. I threw my whole family down there. It's finished. It's finished. It's not like a dungeon. Um, and so yeah, I mean, people mostly, I mean, if people are saying that I'm crazy, it's behind my back, and that's totally okay,
Let them.
which is well expected. But the people who have come into my DMs or have told me in person that I have helped their mental health, that's the reason I talk about it.
Yeah.
It's because somebody out there needs it. And if we have the platform, I feel like
Yeah.
it's,
It,
it's almost like a duty,
totally. If
to
you
be
have a
honest.
platform, how can you not be real and open in a way
Yeah,
that helps others, right? That's how I feel. Like if
correct.
you
Yeah.
don't, then yes, it's a disservice. You're not doing your duty. If it will help others, I'm not saying just
If it
share.
will help others.
Yeah.
No, exactly. But it's like also if you are on it and portraying something completely
Right.
different, it's hard for your audience to trust you later when they do find out.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I just want my audience to get as much of me as they can. Obviously, you can't give everybody everything, and everyone's going to make their own opinion of you regardless. And that's a little scary sometimes because people have decided who you are before they even know
Yes.
you.
Oh my God. I'm
Um,
so sorry. Like my husband who's FaceTiming me, even though he knows I'm
is
recording.
he at the grocery store? Does he need something?
He's going to Trader Joe's, so maybe.
Is he actually? I was right. He's like,
Yes, there's like a
babe.
specific popcorn with yeast that I love, and if he
Yeah.
gets the wrong
Oh
one,
my
then
God, that's the one my mother-in-law likes
oh my
too.
God, it's so good. But my phone is usually
Yeah,
off sound, so apologize. Um,
it's okay.
yeah, I totally agree, and I think that if we're sharing, like you said, you can't give it all, but if you can share something that people can relate to and normalize and help people realize that taking care of yourself is the only way to show up as your best self for your kids, that's better than any hack or,
Yeah,
tool, parenting or otherwise, that you could give. And so that's,
absolutely.
yeah. I know that you also, you know, are a comedian, right?
Yes, I'm funny, but I was a stand-up comic. Like, I don't do it anymore.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
it still shines through.
I'll
Just
take
this
it.
like vibrant, hilarious energy. Have you ever felt that humor has been sort of a crutch for you? We're speaking about sharing ourselves with our audiences. How do you feel that that played in? I have something that I relate to about it, which is why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah,
But
I feel like humor is not so much a crutch, but a tool for me. It's been a tool in so many ways because um, as I speak on darker subjects, it is a lot easier to digest with humor, if
yes,
that makes sense. And I feel like the most, traumatized people are the funniest people. Um, and
I agree.
humor has come in very handy in parenting because, say, for example, if my daughter's having a meltdown, which is like 6 or 7 times a day, and I I can usually diffuse her with some humor, right? We can be a little bit funny, make a joke. Sometimes she'll be like, "Stop
Yes.
it!"
Right.
But
Like it's not funny. Stop laughing at me. But yes, there's other
yeah,
times where
no, yeah. There's other times where you can be a little bit goofy or like make a little joke and it'll like distract her. So I love humor. I think that laughing is like, this is so cliche. Laughter's the best medicine.
oh my God, I fully agree, cliche or not. And I think that we were just on vacation for a week, which, as everybody knows, as a parent, is not necessarily a vacation, although it was so wonderful and I'm so grateful for it. But there was lots of meltdowns. And
Yeah,
there were times that my younger, who's 5, and I thought of you as, I knew that we had this coming up, would have these meltdowns, and I'd see her like smiling through them, almost as if she knew that like goofy mom was coming. And part of me, who, when I've used humor, has felt like, oh, am I, you know, kind of demeaning the importance of what she's feeling? And then I realized that,
yeah.
especially when she was out of her comfort zone, that it was something that helped her, to the point where she'd be in it and she'd be like, can you do that voice again? And so it just kind
Like
of,
she's waiting for it.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so it affirmed that, like, yeah, even kids feel it's medicine. Um,
yeah.
yeah. So I wanted to just, I was curious how you felt about that. Is there humor in your book?
Yeah, there is actually. So even though it's like really dark, there are laughable moments in the book, and whether they're laughable because they're relatable or laughable because of, just like outright humor. Um, it's a roller coaster. Every review that I've read, which is also reading reviews as an author of a book that it hasn't come out yet, but people are reading. Oh my God, like it's like getting your report card, you
Oh,
know?
I can't
Okay,
imagine.
but
Really? Like,
yeah,
not
so
all roses and rainbows?
no, so far it's great, like so far. But like, you're just
It's like,
waiting for that
yeah.
one F to come in and you're like, don't do this to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of emotions elicited throughout the book. People have cried, people have laughed. My mom cried reading it, which was just something. I mean, I think watching your mom cry reading your book is like a highlight of my life because I was just like, oh my God, you felt it. You felt
Right.
it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true. I can't imagine. Yeah. Like that you're covering kind of topics that could be really, tough for her to read, right?
Yeah.
Even if
They
it's not
were, yeah.
exactly about you and it's about this fictional character, like you said, there's like a lot woven in there about you. Have you
Yeah.
guys ever sat and talked about sort of,
Yes. Yes. So, my parents, they have come a long way. They are, it's almost like once we got into adulthood, it was like they kind of like learned from us as much as we learned from them. And as they've gotten older, they've also, become more educated on mental health. Or just overall everything, right? They've really accustomed to life today.
yeah,
They're woke.
Yeah.
to that extent, if that makes sense. And I'm grateful for that because I can have open conversations with my parents. My dad especially has always treated me as equal to my brothers, which is unheard of in our generation, and or not unheard of, but an anomaly for sure.
Yeah.
And having that like really adult friendship with my parents has been so beautiful because we can, as much as I can lean on them, they've also leaned on me. And so, especially as they're getting older, and like it's very interesting. So, like, my dad has like friends that are dying, right? Like, he's at that age now where he's like 77 and like people are dying. And it's interesting to see his, because I had asked him once and I was like, how does it feel like to know, like, these people that you've known for like 50 years have like died,
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, I got to see them die. They didn't see me die, kind of thing. And it's like this, this whole like,
I thought you were
it's
going to
just so
say
like,
that he was like vulnerable, but yeah.
no, my dad's the funniest guy ever. He's not vulnerable about it. I think for him, and we had this conversation with our kids too, because we lost my father-in-law 2 years ago, but he's like, this is the circle of life. Well, the only thing guaranteed in life is death. And the order that it happens is that you will always see, or the order that you want it to happen is that you will want to cremate your parents. Like it
Yeah.
shouldn't be the other way
Right.
around,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? And so that's something that, because my son, when my father-in-law passed away, was pretty young. He was probably like 5.5-ish, 6. Or I guess he was 6. And he was like, so upset and so upset. And I was like, well, this is the order of operations, right? Like, this is the way it's supposed to go. He's supposed to pass away before us, and we're going to pass away before you. And that's the way we want it to happen, right? Like, nobody wants it the other way. So that was really like, it gave him some like, he's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense,
Some like rhyme and
right?
reason to such like an abstract, scary thing. Yeah. S-
Yeah. So they're not really scared of it in that way. Like, it's been a conversation now.
yeah. A few things there. I was curious if you felt like your parents being more woke and these conversations that you've had with them have been healing for them. If you feel that they have, you said your mom struggled sort of silently or just like,
Yeah,
yeah.
silently.
And do you feel that you being so outspoken, writing about it, sharing these relatable things and struggles as, South Asian Indian growing up in America, if you feel like that's been healing for her?
I think so. Yeah. I think that having somebody, first of all, to talk about it with and feeling less alone, right?
Yeah.
It just feeling less alone in it and knowing like, and, she can share like, this is what I went through. And this is, I actually overheard a conversation with my mom and my mother-in-law after my mom read my book, was sharing some of her mental health struggles with my mother-in-law,
Wow.
which I thought was like kind of beautiful because I was
Yeah.
like, oh wow, like you're just like it was very nonchalant. It wasn't like a nobody was crying. It was just like, yeah, I went through this, and so that's why I was really, and she kind of talked about why she related to it. But just her being able to have that conversation is
Yeah.
like strides. So
Yeah. You've normalized it, for her and
exactly, and
so
that's
many
what
others. Yeah.
we need to normalize so much in this world. Like the other one is periods. Okay, I want to know
Oh
your
my
take on this
gosh.
because you have a son, right?
No.
Okay, you have two
two
girls.
two girls, but there's lots of period talk and focus actually. But yes, were you thinking as a mom to a son how, you
Yeah,
know,
so my son knows what a period is. He's
yeah.
8. He learned about it at 5 because he asked. He saw a pad. Mommy was on her period. And he was like, um, why are you wearing a diaper? And I was like, oh, actually, no, this is called a pad. It's for mommy's period. And he's like, what's that? So I told him. I was like, oh, every woman in the world
Yeah.
at some point will get a period. 50% of the population has this. And
And
so
he
I
was
kind of
mind
explained it to him, and
blown.
he was like, was mind blown, but it's so normalized that
Right.
that when the word, there's no like shudder to the word period. There's no like fear. It's just like, oh, yeah, like Karina's gonna get that when she's like 13 or something.
Yeah, I've always been open about it with my girls too, and not where anyone, and I know you either has told us, oh, you should be open about your period with your kids,
Yeah,
male or female, but it's just sort of intuitively felt like anything that I don't share with them, can be something that evokes fear and confusion. And why aren't I sharing something that is
I
so
agree.
normal? I remember when my sister got her period, my older sister, I was like, thought she was dying. Like, I didn't know about it. And I don't blame my parents. I think that it was just sort of, oh, why are we going to talk about this with our young kids? People now understand the importance of sharing things with their kids to normalize and not have
Yeah,
them be confused and fearful of things. I also realized how important it was to share with even my younger daughter early on, because I remember I was wearing earrings that she liked, and she's like, so one day, can I have these earrings? It's just like a joke when they like something of mine that,
yeah,
when
mine
they
does
get
the same
older.
thing.
And I was like, yeah. And then she was 4 at the time. She's like, but will I also have my period when I'm older? And I was like, you will. And she started crying. She was like, so I'm like, I get it.
I get it, girl. Like, let it out.
Right.
Yeah,
I
my son
get
told my daughter, he's like, I'm so happy I'm not a girl.
right.
And I was like, why? He's like, well, because then I don't get my period. And I
Right.
was
Like,
like,
even with us explaining it, it's like, as we also know firsthand, it's not a desirable thing. But I think that makes it even more of a reason to share early on, right? Just because,
exactly.
yeah, it's not
Well,
something.
culturally, in the South Asian culture, there's like, at least when I was growing up, it was like kind of seen as like a dirty thing. So, like, when you were on your period, you couldn't go to the temple,
Oh
like,
my
to be in front
gosh.
of God, which is just wild because
Right.
it's like periods create life. And I, so like when I got mine, it was like, shh, don't tell your brothers, or like, oh, why are you like just saying you're on your period? Like, your brothers are here. Like, it was like a very like, it's almost like something's wrong with you. And
Right.
I was like, this is a solid, like, this is, there's
Nuts.
no other way to create life.
Right. And it's
They're
nuts that
also
we
doing
had to be.
research now. Yeah, I know they're doing research on period blood and how like it has more stem cells than like uh whatever other blood that they're using, but it has like a lot of stem cells in it or something. They're doing like research. A woman is doing research on it, of course.
Oh my, yes, of course. That's incredible. I need to look that up. And yes,
I know, me too.
there's so many things relating to this that I think about, that if it was something men got, there would be so much, we would already know stuff like that. Honestly, I don't want to get into like being a feminist, which like we all are.
We
But
all are.
but yeah, like my nose turns bright red once a month and I never knew why. And I shared because I recorded a podcast, and afterwards I was like, guys, I get this like red inflammation in my nose. I can feel when it's happening when I'm recording. Sometimes like the producer or, the people here helping to support will be like, yeah, I noticed it. What is this? And someone's like, oh, it's when you're ovulating. Like, you have inflammation sometimes. And I was mind blown. And everyone's like, that if
Mind
men
blown.
had this, like, everyone would know about that. Like, and not everyone gets a red nose, but just how, like, things like
Just the
this, like,
inflammation. Yeah.
yeah, I was like going to dermatologists and ENTs. And anyway, yes.
Very cool though.
Right. I'm like exposed.
Hey, are you ovulating right now? I'm
Right.
just like a little Rudolph nose.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's so funny to think about that way. And what else do you feel like you've done a good job normalizing? I know it might be hard to access on the spot, but just, you're an open book both as an influencer and a mom. And I would
Yeah.
say I am too, but there's certain times that I'm like learning and getting there. Like when my daughter cried about her period and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to share this. What else do you feel that you've normalized for both your sons and daughter?
I've normalized the, like no gender roles in our house. So like, for example, like I'm the handyman in our house. Okay, like I'm the one with the drill and I'm the one fixing something. So if something needs to be fixed, they come to mommy. They're like, "Oh, mommy, like this is broken." And we've normalized that because mommy's good at that stuff. And so it's not about if you're a boy or a girl. It's just like some people are good at one thing and are good at another thing. And that's something that's really important to us. We've also normalized affection between me and my husband because I think that's really important. I think it's important for them to see us like hug and kiss and like, be loving. That's not something I saw from my parents growing up. I've never seen them kiss. I'm what, 36 years old? Until today, I've never seen my parents kiss, but I know they love each other. And it's
Right.
just like, but growing up, it's like, it almost made it feel like kissing was like off limits. Like it's not good to do. But,
Right.
and so, it's nice to like kind of normalize that affection with my kids so that they also, I want them to have affectionate partners when they're older. I don't want them to like, you know,
Yeah,
that
to feel like
matters.
icky about it or like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And
totally.
then the other thing, is if we're watching TV and there is some kind of like kissing scene or something like that, cool. Because when we were kids, it was like cover your face. But if there's gun violence or violence, I cover their face.
I fully align with that. Yeah. It's so interesting that we both have taken that route. Yeah, I'll just say, I'm going to turn this off or I'm going to cover your face because this isn't something good.
It's too violent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of like culturally speaking, do you feel like those things like affection, gender roles were tied to your culture and that's why you didn't see it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like in my own home, my dad was, again, an anomaly and he cooked, he cleaned, he did everything, right? My dad was, I don't even know where he came from. He's just one of those guys. But around me, like in society, it was very much like the woman in the kitchen, the man sits in the chair, waits for his food to be served to him, right? The man went to work, the woman stayed home. Um, I saw a lot of that, and I didn't see it in my own home, and I'm very, very blessed for that. And I think that's why I've come as far as I've come in my thinking and my like with my kids. Um, but
Yeah, like knowing
yeah,
the
I mean,
power of that, for
yeah,
you.
knowing, well, yeah, I mean, seeing my father be so active helped me pick somebody who, or choose a life partner who also would be that way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I notice a lot of men in our generation now are like all my friends' husbands, everyone's very like hands-on and does everything, and no one's like sitting there waiting for their food, but also no woman's taken that either.
Right.
Like, no
Exactly.
one's like, what are you waiting for? So
Yeah.
I think it's come to that where it's like we know our standards and we know what we want, and men are matching. And now that they know that, like, it is the gender roles are kind of
Yeah. I fully
going
agree with
away.
that. But I'm also reminded of I it might just be me, but maybe you relate to this or people listening. We were, just traveling and we had a kitchen and where we were staying and my husband who like cooks and does the dishes also all the time. One morning was I think it was the morning or maybe I don't know, he made the girls dinner or something after I had taken them skiing on my own and he was like outwardly talking like daddy's the best, like daddy's cooking and he's cleaning and like he was singing and like doing his own like kitchen acts for himself. But I finally went over, I was like, can you imagine if like every morning while I was doing X, Y, and Z, I was outwardly saying that? Like mommy's the best too. Like, and he realized, I think basically what I'm trying to say is I think that a lot of the gender roles have, become more open, but I do still feel that those who were raised with, the example of one gender role feel like, we're in luck that they haven't taken that. You know what I
No,
mean?
100%. I feel like there's still a lot of like the men get a gold star
Right.
while we get like, yeah, but that you're supposed to do
Right.
that, right? And it's like, oh, you're so lucky that your husband babysits the
Right.
kids.
That exactly. Like the husbands will do
Yeah, no,
that, but be like,
that's
you're
still
so
there.
lucky, kind of energy
Yeah,
around
yeah,
it
like it,
sometimes.
like it could be worse.
Right.
We've seen it, right? So, yeah, there. I mean, I think we have a couple more generations to go before that's diminished because we got these elders right now that get like all excited when like a boy does the dishes. So,
Right. Right.
um, oh, well, that happened to me the other day, and my dad is like not a gender role kind of guy, but like there's little moments, right, where it peeks through.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I was sitting at the dining table working. I was like legitimately like fixing my website and working, and I was like deep in it. And my husband was upstairs getting ready, right? So like he was getting ready to go to, I don't know where he was going, but he was getting ready. And my daughter was upstairs and she was like, somebody turn on my shower, yelling, right? And I was like, ask your dad. And my dad's like, oh, he's busy right now. He might be working, And I was like, I'm working, like literally in
I'm
front of
busy.
you.
Right.
He's probably blow drying his hair. Like, it's okay. But like, it was one of those, like, don't bother him.
Oh my God. Yes.
So I was
Yeah.
like,
It peeks
Dad,
through. It really
it
does.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, like whose work is more important,
Right. Or
you
like
know?
who should feel like they're in luck or won the jackpot with
Yeah.
like certain
No,
things that are just like
totally.
human and we all do
And I
it.
say stuff like that too. I'm like, oh, I got a good one, like we
Right.
got a good one. But it's like, is that what should be expected of all males
Right.
in a domestic? Like somebody once told me, like, people, when you are in a marriage, you have to live like you're living by yourself. Like, how would you clean up if you lived by yourself, right? Like, so if you leave dishes in the sink, they're not going to magically disappear. If you lived by yourself, you would have to wash it. Or like, that's just something that someone once said to me that stuck, and I feel like we both do a pretty good job of that. So
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
I'm so lucky.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And also the examples that we're setting for our kids, I think is so important in that way. Like I wanted my girls to hear and it was a funny interaction, not like even though there was
Yeah.
some like level of seriousness around it, I was just kind of joking with him. I was like, bring them into it. Like, can you imagine if mommy this morning was like, oh, mommy's the best. I'm taking you here or there. And they were all laughing. But I think that that's really what motivates me to kind of like tackle those things head on in front of them in a loving, respectful way, obviously, for them to know that it's not like, similar to your daughter. I'm sure she wasn't like, oh, mommy's expected to turn on my shower. And that's because
Yeah.
of like what tone you've set at home, right? It's not always
Yeah.
mommy. Maybe it's always mommy with the hammer, like it is in my family.
Yeah.
Because daddy doesn't
Mommy's
know how
coming
to
in with a
use the toolbox.
screwdriver.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't
Yes.
that so interesting?
I
And
related so
that's
much to it.
fine because I do, and I could be like, hey, honey, can you get me an Allen wrench? And he'd be like, what?
Right.
Which one is that?
Same. I grew up though with my mom as the tool person,
Oh,
with
that's cool.
yeah, so I think that's also why I've done it, but also I think there's something around the self sufficiency, that is why I do it. Do you relate to I have to be the one to get it done because otherwise it won't or it won't be as good? I struggle with
No,
that.
I don't think it won't be as good. No, no, no. I don't struggle with that. I'm a very good outsourcer. Like I
Delegator.
will outsource. I'm great at delegating tasks.
That's
Um,
such a good
and
quality.
my it took time to get there, but like I don't want to do everything. I
Right.
would prefer if other people did the things,
Yeah.
right? So there, yeah, I can delegate pretty
Right.
well.
Yeah. I think I've grown a lot in that way. And I think you're right that no one wants to do it all. And the only way to see that it's helpful and necessary is by starting to delegate. And so, yeah, I think,
Exactly.
yeah, you have to just
Well,
kind of
the
dive
best
in.
thing I delegated, the best thing, and I know you don't have a dog, but is I hired someone to pick up my dog poop. And I feel like that is one of the best ways I've ever spent my money. I use like a service and they come once a week and they clean the entire front lawn because my dog only goes on the front lawn, like on this one part. But like, who in their right mind wants to pick up poop at like 10-degree weather in Chicago in winter as it's like sunk in the snow?
Besides someone who's
Like,
getting
no,
paid for it.
exactly. And I'm like, this is I will take money away from, I will stop and not spend it somewhere else because this is so much more important. Yeah, it's one of the best things I've ever paid for. I feel like that's true wealth right there, is just like being able to hire someone to pick up your dog shit. To clean
I
up enough shit.
I think it's so important though, you're right. Like I didn't even think of the fact that like having a hard time delegating is not giving into self-care. Similarly, I mentioned the book Prozac Nation now twice. In that book, she wrote another book about taking care of herself and one chapter was about having someone like a cleaning lady once a week or I don't know how frequent. And
Yeah.
as I was reading, I was like, she's right. Like, and I don't mean over the top, but just that's self-care, right? If you can spend
Yeah.
on like manicure, she even said like instead of doing manicures each week, I spent it on once a month, at a time when, in the book she struggles financially and stuff. But that was something that she did. So even if it's not
Yeah.
that you've all the money, like it's also just investing in that is a form of self-care.
Yeah. I mean, like
Yeah.
I don't get manicures. Like I do my own nails and my feet. I do that once a quarter, and I laminate my own eyebrows and all of that.
Oh,
I'm like, that's where
wow.
I save all my money. And I'm like, so I
But
can
the
pay the guy
dog
to pick
poop,
up a dog
right.
poop.
Not going to save
There's certain
there.
things I don't want to do. I don't want to clean the toilets. I have someone come
Right.
once every 2 weeks and do all the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Like, there's just certain things. And you know what? And it's not like my husband doesn't want to do it either.
Right.
He's like, there's just certain things we're both just like, it's not worth it.
Right. I don't need my handy belt or my
I
toolbox for
don't
this.
need.
Like I'm going to give that to somebody
Yeah,
else.
exactly.
Well, I feel like I really want to get into, before we go, a little bit about where you feel you struggled the most, culturally or, as South Asian Indian. I think listeners who, don't see themselves in mainstream, even if it's as a young child in toys or movies, I think we've come such a
Yeah,
long way and there's
so
something
far.
for everybody for sure. But how do you feel like you're contributing with this book? Of course, besides the obvious, like what made you feel so passionately about it in that way?
Yeah, the okay, so I think one of the amazing things is yes, there's culture in the book that is relatable, especially to my generation of millennials and some adolescents today. But the other thing is like portraying a brown Indian girl like just as a very American normal human and not like someone with an accent, not someone who's wearing like Indian clothes all the time or like a good example of this would be, have you ever seen Sex Lives of College Girls?
No,
Okay, so it's a show on HBO Max by it's created by Mindy Kaling, who's a genius,
the
and
best.
there's a character in there, Amrita Kaur, who is the Punjabi girl in it, and she is the sex positive, like
Oh, I
it's
need to
not
watch
the
it.
typical role. It's not the typical role you'd see for like the Indian girl. Like she's
Right.
not like the nerdy, smart, like meek. No, like this girl is like, and honestly, she makes me think of me in college, where she's just like sex positive and she's like a comic and she's just funny and she's
Oh,
always
I
like, there's
love
scene. She
that.
has like a butt naked scene in there,
Like a sexual
and
powerhouse in like a healthy way.
in the best way, and it's
Yeah.
so great because I'm also someone who's like super sex positive, and I was even in my like college years, and so to like see another woman portrayed like that, I'm like, yes, like
Yeah.
that that's what I think that this book can also do in terms of mental health. Is like just have that like, okay, like we're not all this,
Right.
you know, very like not good
Right. I
Indian
don't
girls.
have to
Like
be the
there's
stereotype to,
yes.
do right by my culture and embody my
Right.
culture and who I am. Yeah, that it doesn't
I
come.
think people forget that Indians wrote the Kama Sutra, but like, let's just
Oh, you have to write a book about that, or we have to have you back on to
like,
talk about that.
right? Like, Indians wrote that. And like, we're
Yeah,
over here all shy. Like, we're the most populated country for a
yeah.
reason.
And I think all of what you shared is so powerful for people now, adults now, but also next generations, that you're contributing to the fact that being a certain culture is not anti anything. It's just
Yeah,
being
it's
a
culture.
human. Yeah. How do you feel that you've preserved and valued who you are while also sharing, as you said, sort of these stereotypically like anti your culture? How have you,
Yeah.
you know, preserved that, which I'm sure you feel is important, you know?
Well, in terms of the culture, I've still preserved the cultural aspects that I think are important, like
Right,
our holidays, our celebrations, like religion and all of that, because none of that says anything about
right,
everything else.
right,
That's just from people's, you know, lack of education or closed mindedness and things like that. Um, but preserving who I am, I've just been as honest as possible as I could on my platform, even when I'm wrong. Like when I fell into overconsumption the last, like, for a couple years and I pulled out of it and I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Right?
Yeah.
Like I became what I didn't want to be, which was just like someone who was like, link this, link that. And eventually, a light bulb went off in my head and I was like, oh, this ain't me. And it took my son because he watched that documentary By Now on Netflix.
I've heard
It's a
about it.
documentary about overconsumption, and he was like, "Mom,
Do you do this?
100%." And I was like, "I do." And he was like, "What if you didn't?" Right? Like, what would that look like for us? Would we not have any money? Like, and I was like, not really. No, like we could probably pull back. And I don't want you to do that. Like he was like literally questioning my morality. And I was like, I had to sit with that and be like, what do I do? Do I pull out of being this like Amazon influencer? Um, do I start sharing more conscious and,
Right.
eco-conscious like shopping? Because I love secondhand shopping. I love
Oh, me
renting, you
too.
know? Right. And so I'm like, I need to share more of that.
Right.
And so I kind of pulled back and I have cut down my own consumption by like 85% because of it, which is so cool.
So cool. And I think even what you're sharing is so cool, that how you've stayed true to everything is just being real and growing, right? That's like what
Yeah.
any
Everyone changes.
right, no matter what your background or who you are, that it's just being a human, and that it's not just being these like stereotypical like, oh, I'm a good meek, Indian girl who's home helping her mom cook or whatever it is, and just sharing when you're wrong and growing, all of that. It's just being real,
Yeah.
honestly.
But I'm totally still like the one with helping my mom cook, just so you know, I'm both. All
Yeah.
right. I married a nice Indian doctor,
Right. And but that's also
as
fine. Like
expected.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's just, I
You can
think,
be both.
right. You don't have to you don't have to be at odds with who you are and what your culture, says you should be. And I think that's like the most
100%.
important thing of what you're doing, and why I was really excited to have you on to talk about that. As you said, we've come a long way, but we still have a ways to go. So thank you so much for sharing so openly. Is there anything that you can
Absolutely.
give us in terms of where we can find you? Any,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I am Mama Jotes across all socials. I I'm going to be going on a book tour starting May 13th and hitting a lot of big cities. So I'm excited. So stay tuned. And if you guys want to meet me in person, that is a great time. And then my book is Fitting Indian is available everywhere books are sold. And a quick shout out to my illustrator, Thara Anand, who illustrated the book so beautifully. I mean, the way she did this like 300-page graphic novel, full color bleed, is like phenomenal. So talented, and so I always feel like she needs to get like the recognition she deserves too.
that's
Bringing it
incredible.
alive. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to get my hands on it. And you have to share when you're going to be in New York City on your book tour so that I can meet you in person,
Yes.
have you make me
Absolutely.
laugh, and give lots of mom hugs. Thank you all for listening to Jyoti Chand, and get excited for Fitting Indian.